This is sort of like what Bernie Sanders has always wanted to do. It's exactly what Obama always wanted to do. It's exactly what Bill Clinton always wanted to do. Why is it different when Donald Trump wants to do it?
Because he's actually doing it. That's why. Biden could have done it. Every Democrat in the country should be toasting Trump tonight because of this prescription drug. If they were really sincere Democrats and really wanted to help American seniors, but they're not. Look, like him or not, Trump's getting things done, right? Biden sat there for 4 years. It's not what about. It's just giving you some perspective.
Yeah?
And did jack, nothing, zero. Hurt the country in every way you could possibly hurt the country. Trump comes in and says, look, this is a bad deal that Germany has got, 80% less for an American prescription drug, and we're not going to do that anymore. What the deuce is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? And he'll deliver. Trump will get lower prescription drug prices.
Okay, so we can...
And will one Democrat in the country go like this? Will anyone applaud Leland?
Well,
no.
To be fair...
What's going on, everyone? It's Toss Kenny here today, and Trump just changed the game. This may go down as the biggest healthcare shift in American history. Trump just did what every other politician promised to do but failed. He took a wrecking ball to Big Pharma, an executive order to slash drug prices up to 90%. Then RFK exposed why no one else, not even Bernie, even followed through. And before I go into some clips, highlighting some of the announcements that Donald Trump has made, I kind of want to go over the fact that, how we always complain about our healthcare costs. And I remember when we had this whole thing when it was us against the world, when it was America versus everybody, and how Trump pointed out how many of these countries take advantage of the United States of America. And I talked about the sentiment of many people who voted for Donald Trump, including myself, is that I believe Americans' kindness is being taken for weakness. We're being taken advantage of. I talk about how Americans technically subsidize the healthcare system of all these other Europeans that the same ignorant Americans here will say, oh my God, Europe has such a better healthcare system. Their healthcare cost is so much cheaper. Yeah, because we pay more to subsidize their lower cost. And I want to show you an example of this with this clip here before I go into more detail about Trump's announcement with RFK against Big Pharma. Let's take a look.
A big part of the focus here, they've been calling this most favored nations. And that principle really means they want Americans to be paying no more than really peer economic nations for prescription medicines. And it's true that in other developed countries, Americans pay about 2.78 times more on average for pharmaceuticals than about 33 other countries that a RAND report looked at. So we do pay a lot more for our medicines. And as part of this, the Trump administration says they want to get other countries to start paying more for prescription drugs so that Americans can start paying less. So that is one of the tenets here as part of this, as well as within 30 days, trying to reach sort of a threshold that they want pharmaceutical companies to get to in terms of that most favored nation pricing, seeing how the pharmaceutical companies respond, and if they don't, then implementing this policy more broadly and potentially punitively. There are a number of other things that they're looking at here, including potentially importing more drugs from other countries beyond Canada. There are some issues with that in terms of the supply of the medicines in those countries themselves. They are not big fans of that idea. And even export controls from the United States as a sort of form of making sure that the United States has control over the drugs that it's making here and has influence over maybe pricing around the rest of the world. But guys, there are a lot of questions about how this will be implemented. And of course, whether it happens immediately, nobody really expects to happen.
But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what for the same drug that what we pay many, many times more for, and will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing, but they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal, brutal. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. It depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. but between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%.
I have a tough time picking which video I want to kind of do my longer form commentary on. So I just want to point out Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz followed with a line that will stay with you long after the gravity of this is all set. This is the most powerful executive order on pharmaceutical pricing and healthcare ever in the history of our nation. And this is the part this is where Democrats don't serve a purpose at all. Americans, if I tell Americans about this, if I ask my coworkers about this, because one of my coworkers confided in me that the reason why he voted for Donald Trump was because of RFK. If you told Americans this was happening and they want it codified into law, Ro Khanna from the Democrats is the only person that I know of me making this video who has give his guarantee to help codify this into law. The only Democrat. As you saw from the intro, Bill O'Reilly pointed out, do you see any Democrats doing this? Do you see Bernie Sanders praising this as, hey, finally, Donald Trump is doing what I wanted to do in this country? Is he doing that? No, he's silent. He's quiet. You wonder why. Curious Minds wants to know. He explains how Americans have been forced to pay 5 to 10 times more than people in Europe for the exact same medication. This idea, Europeans' healthcare is better. The reason why y'all come across with that frame is the fact that the U.S. is paying 2 times more. So that way, other countries can pay 33% less. This is why we have mixed feelings about our healthcare system. Most people in America like their healthcare system, but there's things that it could be better about, drug pricing being one of them. And this is the reason why I'm staunchly against globalism. Because globalism requires, a nicer way of saying it, a sucker, a slave. Globalism is socialism at scale. Globalism is slavery. One country has to be the slave state where everyone can take advantage of cheap labor, right? China is like that. That's how China is. China offers cheap labor. India, to some degree, offers cheap labor. And they get taken advantage, not taken advantage. The people in power benefits from their people being used as a labor force, as a service for cheap goods and labor. So that way they can send their products to markets that can afford higher price ups. And in the US, in globalism's little world, we serve as, you're the discount. You pay all the research fees, all the manufacturing fees for these drugs. You generate, imagine that. Most of these drugs are created from the United States economic system. But the Americans, the place where it's produced, the people pay the most. Make that make sense to me. That's globalism for you. Now, if we lived in, a patriotic, nationalist kind of not economy, but government that cared about its priorities of its people, that would never happen. And this is why Trump won. They're mad because I'm in the way. That's Trump's famous political phrase. They're not mad at me. They're mad at you. I'm just in the way. In the way of letting these pharmaceutical companies charge you more money because you're an American. You hold up the research costs and all that, so that way European Union can sit there and brag about how good their healthcare system is, not being open about how they're being subsidized by the United States of America. This is one of the ways. On top of getting foreign money from us, getting, I forgot what it's called, foreign aid, on top of getting foreign aid from the United States, we subsidize their payments, right? We protect their country from foreign invaders with our military, with our presence, and they don't pay us a dime for it. Isn't that sweet? We work, they eat. We pay the drugs, they get it for cheap. And Trump was like, I'm done with this status quo. This stuff doesn't serve America. And liberals online, liberals in my life, Democrats in my life, are still Pikachu face surprised. How can a black man vote for Trump? How about paying 40 to 30% less on your drug prices? Black people, you don't think you benefit from that? Donald Trump did it. Are you going to give Donald Trump credit for that? Hell no. Somehow you'll spin this as a bad thing. This is why I'm tired of these people who try to virtue signal and moralize about their hatred of Trump. They wear their hatred of Trump like a badge of honor. And for what end? Nothing. Just their pride. But I digress. Let's get into this clip of JFK pulling back the curtain on why politicians in the past have not done what Donald Trump has done right now. Let's take a look.
This is
This is an extraordinary day. This is an issue that, I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator on Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this
Imagine that, right? And but who's in the pocket of the pharmaceutical company? Say it with me: Democrats. Democrats get the most money out of the pharmaceutical companies, right? But these progressives, these socialists, they're always talking about how the Democrats are better. Oh, they're gonna do all this stuff. They promised all this stuff. They did nada. Biden had an opportunity to do this stuff. He did nada. He did nothing. Because these people are paid by them. Half of the Republicans paid by the pharmaceutical companies. Marjorie Taylor Greene is getting some backlash because people found out she get money from pharmaceutical companies. She had to answer for that. She said, no, these people don't control me. Everyone's getting called out. Everyone's being put on notice. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, who RFK called out during his confirmation hearing to be health secretary. And he was like, no, those are from the employees of the companies. Not from the companies themselves, but from the workers. The workers. Yeah, a CEO's a worker, technically. A vice president in the pharmaceutical company is a worker, technically. They're playing all these optic games, these semantic games, but at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. I digress. Let's continue.
This was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress. We now have a president who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, too. I think they gave you $100 million. Yeah. But he can't be bought, unlike most of the politicians in this country.
And this is the funny part about it. What's $100 million to a billionaire? Maybe that's 10% of his income, but who cares? Like, he can afford to lose it. You can afford to lose 10. If I told you something will cost you 10% of your income, you would be like, yeah, that's fine. But for these politicians, that's a lot of money. They don't come from money like that. That's a lot of money for them. So they be like, oh, I don't want to lose that. I got to be here for a couple more years. I want to make a career out of being a politician for 20 plus years. This is how you stay under the thumb of lobbyists. This is why a lot of people advocate for term limits. Because if you got a term limit, whether you're a congressman or a senator, the lobby money don't matter no more because I have a short shelf life here. But if you got these career politicians, that's when the lobbyist influence is even more influential. I'm just saying. And with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the criticism she's getting, RFK just pointed out Trump got $100 million and he still did what he needed to do because Trump could afford to lose the money. A lot of these politicians, they can't afford to lose the money. A lot of these politicians, this is their best chance at making 6 figures and up. I give you a prime example. What's his name? Maxwell Frost. That guy was a community organizer in Orlando, right? There was no possibility he was going to make the kind of money he's making right now. But he ended up becoming a politician. People like that, they're easily controlled. Those people can be bought. Because, being a politician is the only viable career you had to make the kind of money you're making right now. Maxwell Frost, you're a community organizer. They don't make much money. I think, $50K, 60 grand, 70, maybe 70. If he got up there, he's making well over 6 figures being a congressman. You think he can lose that seat? Oh, hell no. He'll do anything he can to maintain that seat. Because that's his best possibility of him making the kind of money he's making now. Based on what I know of him. And these kind of politicians are who are easily controlled by these pharmaceutical companies, by these lobbyists. But I digress. Let's continue with this video.
And he is standing here for the American people. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than President Donald Trump. And I'm very, very proud of you, Mr. President, for your courage, I'll say, because I don't want to be crude, your intestinal fortitude, your stiff spine, and your willingness to stand up for the American people. We have 4.2% of the world's population. Our country represents 75% of the revenues for pharmaceutical companies.
Imagine that. 4% of the world pays 75% of the pharmaceutical cost and revenue. We produce 75% of the profits. And people will try to disagree with me in the comment section right now saying, oh, no way America subsidized the rest of the world's medical drug cost. And then they wonder why the Americans are arrogant. You wonder why they get so mad when Americans do things for their own best interest. Because if Americans do things for their own best interest, it makes everyone else's lives harder. Because they'll start have to picking up the slack that we've been holding for them. They can work 32-hour work weeks. You know, Europeans known for their work-life balance, numerous days off, labor laws, all that stuff. Because our productivity allows them to be like that. But if America ever has a 32-hour work weeks, 4-day work weeks, it'll hurt the rest of the world. Because they lost that productivity that allowed them to slack off. America is like that worker, that coworker, you know, that he works so hard that if you slack off, no one's going to notice a thing because he works so hard. But the minute he slacks off, you're like, no, you can't do that because it exposes the game. And this is what's going on here in a global sense. And this is where Donald Trump's talking about people are being, we are being taken advantage of, not only the American taxpayer, but the country itself. And the politicians are acting like noblemen, allowing their people to get taken advantage of for their own personal gain and interest.
We spend in our country $1,126 per capita on drugs. In Britain, they spend about $240. They spend 1/5 of what we do. And this is true across Europe.
Oh, healthcare, the European healthcare system is way better. It's cheaper too. I wonder why.
And the drug companies, Europeans, if you ask them, it made no sense what they were saying. Well, America has to pay for this innovation or it's not going to happen. President Trump is saying to our European partners is you got to raise the amount that you're paying for those drugs and pay for your share of the innovation. That the United States is no longer subsidizing that. If the Europeans raise the price of their drugs by just 20%, that is $10 trillion that can be spent on innovation and the health of all people all across the globe.
Imagine how bad our politicians were, that they set us up in a position where this was happening to us. People want to take cheap shots at the American healthcare system, and then the people from these other countries where they brag about their healthcare system is being subsidized by us paying more. You didn't want to carry your slack, so we end up carrying the slack and you got to benefit. You got the same salary we got, but you doing less work. And then Trump's here to rectify that situation. Hey, you working hard. It's time for that guy to carry his weight. We don't want you to get burnt out. That's how Americans feel. We feel burnt out carrying the world. We feeling burnt out sacrificing ourselves for the betterment of the country, of the globe. And you wonder why Trump won. The Europeans are wondering why Trump won. When I talk about the sentiments of the American people, as someone who voted for Trump, as someone who voted for the current president of the United States of America, I told you that Americans felt taken advantage of. And people in the comment section from European countries who disagree with me say, no, that's not happening, Kenny. Trump is taking advantage of your sentiment, your feelings. There's no evidence to suggest that Americans are being taken advantage of. Then boom, we show you the facts, the crushing facts. And I'm looking at you like, oh, you're lying in my face. That, or you're ignorant about how your own system worked, how your healthcare system worked. Bragging about your Canadian healthcare system. You mean that system where you have to wait 2 months to see someone, so a doctor can see your broken leg with your free health care? Even with the option of free health care, people still decide to pay for health care. But you want to take cheap shots at our healthcare system, when the reason why our healthcare system is so bad, so inefficient, is because these corporations think, oh, we can just charge Americans more and charge Europeans less. That's why. I'll let it ride out.
It is going to increase because we're going to have better products. So I'm just so grateful to be here today. I never thought that this would happen in my lifetime. I have a couple of kids who are Democrats, are big Bernie Sanders fans. And when I told them that this was going to happen, they had tears in their eyes because they thought this is never going to happen in our lifetime. And we finally have a president who's willing to stand up for the American people.
And Democrats just want to get in his way. Make it make sense, Democrats. Who you fighting for, Democrats? You just want to get in his way. That's all the Democrats are good for. This is why the Democrats should lose in midterms. Okay, you want to get in the way of this? You don't want to codify this into law? Get out. You serve no purpose, Democrats. You only serve your own purpose. And it's hard for Democratic voters to really argue with me on this. Look at the actions of the Democratic Party. I don't care about your words. I don't care about your platitudes. Look at your actions. But, I digress. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.